Hello, good morning. My name is Pablo Cerdeira. I'm the Chief Data Officer of Rio de Janeiro. I'm also a lawyer and a professor of law and technology at Fundação Getúlio Vargas Law School in Rio. At the city of Rio de Janeiro, where I'm now, I lead a team called Big Data Pensa Room of Ideas. It could be translated as Think Room of Ideas, better saying. This group was created almost 2 years ago after some discussions among our mayor, Eduardo Paes, our secretary of governance, Pedro Paulo, and the former mayor of New York, Mr. Bloomberg. And I then was invited to be the lead of this team. And it was, of course, forged by having the MODA team as our first references. You are our commission Breton, as you said here. Since the inception of this team, we are trying to understand why use big data and how can we relate big data and define conclusively the terms big data, ideas, and governance. This was by far our main challenge over these 2 years. I'd like to start by presenting here a very brief story about the National Council of Justice of Brazil. Was a new court created to control and fiscalize the judiciary in Brazil. And one of the main projects we developed there, I was working at the National Council of Justice at the time, one of the most important projects we created at the time was the Justice in Numbers. It was a big database with a lot of case decisions, parts of the legal cases. And in 2008, we decided to add the Supreme Court case docket numbers in our database. This was the reaction of the Justice Marco Aurelio at the time, Justice of our Supreme Court. According to we studied São Paulo newspaper, the justice said, I do not accept that the Supreme is placed on the CNJ, National Council of Justice website. But the real phrase was this: I do not accept that the data of Supreme is placed on CNJ's, National Council of Justice website. It's clear, according to him, that having the data of the Supreme Court means to have the power to control the court. And they are, of course, the great grand Supreme Court of Brazil that are not being allowed to be under the control or under the oversight of another court. I respectfully disagree with him. I do think the people, the society must have the power to see and oversight every single democratic institution. Of course, as expected, the Supreme data was removed from the Brazilian National Council of Justice website. So, trying to build an answer to the question I asked you before, why big data? The first conclusion to me is big data means big power. But power, according to Weber's concept of state, is a human, this is the concept of state to Weber, a human community that claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory. But we are living different times now. Maybe the power doesn't need to be landed over domination anymore. Just let me show you a few information about the Brazil in the last 20 or 25 years. We grew up from 143 million people to 119. Or, just let me see here, our middle class grows up 77%. And the total citizens living in the middle class grows up 73 million inhabitants. It's almost an entire German now consuming, using data, using cell phone, generating data that we can use in our government to understand and to help the society. We are now the 4th country in the world in terms of cell phones. We have more cell phones than people in Brazil. I personally don't understand why, but we have all this data, all these cell phones linked and working all the time. 20 years ago, we used to have just, our source of information was just some few newspapers, some magazines, Barça, Britannica. A computer cost was around $8,000 in Brazil. A landline phone was considered inheritance. We used to leave it to our descendants in Brazil. We used to have only 6 TV channels. This is our Brazil 20 years ago, okay? We are consumers of this kind of data. Internet, big data was just something we were trying to imagine at the time. Now we are always using cell phone, tablets, mails, social networks, taking pictures using our GPSs, saving documents on the cloud, etc., etc. I like to quote this small part of a poem from Mallarmé that says, "As to himself, at last eternity changed him," which means we are work in progress during all our lives, and we are a finished person only when we die. But now, when we are leaving a lot of footprints all over the landscape, digital footprints all over the landscapes, even our concept of person, I believe, is going to change in the next decades. If I ask you something about your grandmother, about your grandparent, what did he like to eat, something like that, you probably are not able to answer. But I'm quite sure that your great-grandson will be able to know a lot about you, about your preference, about what did you like to do, etc. So to us, I'm considering big data here as a big store source. We can use, for instance, this study from 3 guys from Stanford and Cambridge, if I'm not sure, but I think it's from Stanford and Cambridge. That shows that if you have more than 250 likes in your Facebook account, an algorithm is able to answer more correct answers about you than your wife, for instance. Yes, this is what we are. This is the new society we are building. We are building a society that everything is recorded, everything is stored, and will stay there forever to be analyzed, to be understood. So, how it can affect the government, technology and data, and the future? I can see 4 previous generations, 4 previous steps of interrelation among citizens and the government. The first stage was when the government starts to offer informational websites to the citizens. A second generation came after that, when government starts to allow restricted interactions, like the 311 here in New York, 1746 in Brazil. A third generation was when governance allows the citizens to send open interactions, like collaborative mapping, etc. We are now facing the 4th generation, when we are using this data to real-time reactions, like to control emergency centers, operation centers like this. But what we can expect for the next decade, for the next few years? I really do think that we are going to face this 5th generation, I'm calling the ubiquitous digital democracy, when the government and citizens are changing information during all the time, not only when we have elections every 4 years, not when we have some surveys done by an expensive agency, something like that. We are now able to measure the effects of every single decision we make as decision makers in the government in real time. And I think it's already happening, and it's already affecting our governments. Uber, Airbnb, crypto coins, among other technologies, what they are doing? they are not only new technology, they are in fact new forms of civil organizations requesting back the power once delegated to our governments. Why do we need governments behind tax regulation and fiscalization? Why do we need governments behind hotel regulation and fiscalization? Why do we need government regulation regarding money? Why do we need government at all? If you don't recognize this change in the society, what's happening when society are developing these new technologies, these new apps, bringing back the power once they delegate to us, we are going to face huge problems in the future. And here I'm speaking as a government here, okay? So I think the government of the future needs to be rethought to be able to answer not only social demands they receive, but to deal with this real-time dispute by the power itself. We're not here just analyzing what the citizens are doing. We are trying to build a new relation with the citizens in this society. I'm going to show you just a brief examples of the cases we are developing in Rio, but the message here is this. It's not the technology at all. It's the political message I would like to bring you from here is that we are seeing technology as a new way to integrate government and citizens, okay? Technology once was considered an isolation act as a geek in his room, computing all over the night. Then it became a social act with social networks, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And now what we are trying to build in here is to transform technology, the usage of technology, in a political act. Okay, so I think that Uber, Airbnb, Bitcoins, etc., much more than technological acts, but political acts. Not to control, but to organize our city. Just let me go a little bit faster. I'm going to show you.
Well, Pablo, we've got just another minute or two, so.
Yeah, I'm going to finish.
Thank you.
I would like to show you some analysis we are doing with 1746 or 301 in Rio de Janeiro. Here we're seeing how rubbish debris occurs, the street lighting, irregular parking, street cleaning, how the demands occur in the city during the year and in intensity over the neighborhoods. This analysis cost us 0 and was able to increase the evaluation by the citizens of this politics by 20% on surveys we realized. This is how we are doing the plannings. Pedro Arias here, one of your colleagues, is the guy behind these studies, and I'm sure he will be able to show a lot of details about it. Just to finish, I will pass this. We are using ways to measure the speeds on the city and to design new roads. But to link with the next presentation, I'd like to show you something about dengue. Look at this red circle. This is the dengue cases in Rio, okay? Dengue is a typical tropical disease that spreads over a mosquito bite, but actually who spreads the disease over the city are the citizens when we are traveling through the city. What we were doing here was trying to map where dengue starts and when, and how to suggest places to fight against it, okay? So if you see those lines that show us the dengue case per district, you can see that Bangu and Realengo, that neighborhoods inside that circle, is the areas where the dengue starts to grow up before any other districts during the 2 years before, the years before the dengue case, okay? Just to end this, the result of, we are not responsible for fighting dengue. Actually, this is this was done by the health agency in Rio, but we offered subsidies, we offered data to help him, okay? So if you compare dengue in the last year, cases per 100,000 inhabitants, São Paulo, the capital, had 286. Taubaté, 3,374. Campinas, 307,031. Americana, 425 cases per inhabitants. And Rio, in the last year, only 41. All these cities are in the same latitude, and as dengue is a disease related to weather conditions, this is a great result. I will be, and here my time has ended, but it will be a pleasure to talk to you later and to answer your questions if necessary, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just a process note, two actually. If you would, I think I'm going to turn to Andrew McLaughlin next, and then we'll close with the Undersecretary, if we may. You have on your table index cards. Those cards can be used to write questions, and they will be the fuel for our the next segment of our work together. So as questions arise, if there's someone that you want to ask a specific question of, or the panel, please jot it down. And that's right. That's what these are for, right? Okay, good. So.